My guest today is Lynita Mitchell-Blackwell, and I'm so grateful to have her on the show. She brings her experience and her vulnerability, two very important things that we have in this life, because our experience is what dictates our truth and our lessons and our education. And when we become vulnerable with that experience, people can learn from us. I mean, how beautiful is that when we share our experiences free from judgment? When we do not judge ourselves, it allows us to become vulnerable, to share that education. And that's such a beautiful thing that this podcast does, but really what this episode does. Lynita Mitchell-Blackwell was a lawyer. She was the CEO of many companies where she was putting so much of herself out in the external world, being a parent, being a chauffeur, being a chef, being a wife, and a businesswoman, that it brought her to a point of exhaustion where it almost killed her. Now, we think in our life that this is a pretty normal thing to do, and it is. And especially in many cultures, we teach children that they must take on more than they can handle, as it's someone else's idea of success. We crave this attention to be seen and to be heard and to be accepted by society standards, that we forget that the most important value and standard is our own. And when we forget that, we can push ourselves to the point of death, which is what happened to Lynita Mitchell-Blackwell. And I think it's such a relevant story to share, because I think our pursuit of success externally from us is so normal within society. That's actually taught within education, when in reality, what Lynita found and what I found and many other podcast guests that I have on this show have found is that the greatest journey and the greatest destination of success that we could all possess is found within. That inner work, that inner journey to unconditional love for self. Because it's what alleviates you from what the external world has led you to believe is important. And really, within reality, we must put ourselves first. And I want to talk about that, and I want to normalize that, because it is very important. Self-love is not selfish. It's a requirement. Self-care is a requirement in this life. How can we love another without loving ourselves? And if we don't ask these questions, and more so if we don't practice and learn the answers to these questions, we often can push ourselves to avoid the question altogether. So these podcast episodes and these podcast guests help show you what it means to ask these questions and seek answers. So in this episode, we're going to learn lots of practical tools about self-love, self-care, and we're going to hear it from an individual's experience in a journey. So I hope you enjoy this podcast episode as much as I did having it. It's a pleasure to sit here across from you. And even when we had that one phone call, there was just something about you that just captivated me. And I was like, this woman has a story, as we all do, but the way you share energy, the way you share your truth, it was captivating to me, driving in a car, going to look at a job for my construction company, to the point where I haven't done a podcast in a while. So you are my first one.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate you. I appreciate your truth and the ability to be an example of vulnerability. I think that's key. Today, I want to just share with people right away, I guess, is like, what do you think what do you believe people will take away from this episode, sharing what you've got to share?
That the person who has to be cared for first is self, because otherwise you cannot effectively care for anyone else. That is the big takeaway here.
I love that. And I love that, you think that you'd think we'd be taught that as kids, right?
Goodness, right?
Like we got to go through all this pain, all this suffering, all these extreme difficult experiences, usually with the face of trauma, and really have to use that as a tool to understand what you just said. It's incredible. But I do believe that those of us that did traverse these adversities were strong enough to face it, to be able to bring the information out.
Agreed.
Yeah, it's beautiful when we can talk about self-love and self-care. What are some of the best tools you've used for self-care and self-love?
The first thing is I really do work to get a good night's sleep every night.
Love it.
Yeah, enough is not shared about the benefits and the restorative value of rest. Um, and when I get up in the morning, I spend an hour with just me. So while the house is quiet before my husband and my daughter get moving, I stretch my body, I drink water, I do my prayers and my meditations, and I go into exercise. And that hour really sets the tone for my day because since I prioritize my well being, then I can be strong for other people. And, during the day, depending on the type of day, I might need to do a check in or two or three. But for the first few hours, that big block, I'm in good shape for not just me, but for everyone that I encounter.
Yeah, I mean, like the importance, you said so many important things there, and I love that you said sleep was like one of your biggest tools for self-love and self-care because let's be real. I mean, when you talk about self-love and self-care, people are like, I don't know what it is. Yet
Yes.
it's the simple things in life, like good diet, drinking
Yeah.
lots of water,
Yeah.
having a good sleep pattern, like taking an hour for yourself in the morning before the world becomes chaotic. And that practice in itself, like, sets your whole day up based off of that mindset. So it's such a beautiful, powerful tool.
Yes. And I had to learn it the hard way. I would love to tell everyone that I always had this figured out and that I always follow the rules. But as I shared with you, Justin, I am a recovering applauseaholic. And so I used to go days sometimes without sleeping. And sometimes the call to that is there in the back of my mind because there were a lot of great things that came with all of that work. I met a lot of wonderful people and served a lot of people. But that path led me down and into some very uh, treacherous trails. And that included some serious health challenges, some serious challenges to my business, to my relationships, both professional as well as personal. And I have to always keep that in my mind. This is why I take care of me so I can be a loving and generous person to the people that I care about.
Yeah, like and again, your truth, your through your truth through your experiences, just by saying what you just said is that we don't have it all figured out. Even
Mhm.
myself, a practice is a practice until till the end. Every time you reach the peak of a mountain, you're at the base of a new one. So, it's a never-ending process till the journey's over. And I think that's the accumulation of the education through our action. And
Yeah.
I love that. So you got to describe a little bit about what's an applauseaholic. I love this term.
Thank you. This is a person, and I'm a person, so I'm not pointing fingers, right? This is a person who gets high off of hearing people tell them how great they are, being in front of crowds, and hearing the applause. You're so wonderful. So happy to have you on my team. Goodness, what would we do without you? And that is addictive.
Yeah.
And I got to a place where I would do just about anything to hear that. And it was staying up late. It was saying yes to projects that I knew I needed to say no to. It was making commitments, both financial as well as time, that were way beyond me. And it led to me being seriously overextended, not just in my physical health, but my credit cards, my debt level was outrageous. But Justin, I was getting the awards, I was getting the applause, I was being recognized wherever I went. And it was intoxicating. And even after my body started to break down, like literally my hair started to break off in clumps.
Yeah.
And instead of doing something, just putting one thing down, I just started wearing wigs. And they were quite fabulous, let me tell you. Uh, and my skin really took a beating. And I just learned how to do my makeup like these awesome Instagram girls. And my nails literally started splitting down the middle. And I just started wearing, the blinged out nails. So as long as I was able to present in a way that was like, Lynita is fabulous, I didn't stop and I was not going to stop. What stopped me, at least to pause, was when my daughter, who at that time was 6 years old, found me in the middle of the floor, passed out from exhaustion. And she was too small to understand that I was not just asleep, I was incapacitated. And so she is the most darling person. She went to her bed and got her Disney princess's blanket and she put it over my body. And she got one of her little pillows and she tucked it under my head and she kissed me on the forehead and she said, "Good night, Mama." And the only thing I had strength to say was, "Good night, baby." That was the first time I was not able to put my child to bed. My child put me to bed. And just I knew something needed to change, but I didn't know what. Performing like that had gotten me everything that I ever wanted. An attorney, a CPA, a best-selling author, a publisher. I was running a media company. I was an agent to entertainers as well as athletes. I mean, I was married to and am married to a great guy and had a beautiful daughter. I had the life that other people would have killed for. And so to even think about stopping was inconceivable to me. And so I just went back to what I knew. I took a little break, and when I say little, I mean maybe about a weekend, a long weekend, to get myself together, and then I went right back to what I knew, and I did not have another hard stop until my body was just like, that's it. And I started bleeding profusely, and I pray that this is not too graphic, but this is my truth.
Bring it, bring it.
I was bleeding through the Depends diapers, the adult diapers.
Yeah.
And um, as a woman, that is horrifying for you to be out in public and all of a sudden you just have blood just running. And so I went to the doctor and it was many, many tests. Because at first it was, oh, you have fibroids. But, you know, I started having these pains in places where the fibroids was not, they weren't going to account for that. And so it was more tests and more doctors. And I need to really say this. My husband has always had platinum health insurance, no matter where he has worked. And even with that coverage, some months my co-pays exceeded $500.
Dang.
I said just my co-pays. And so to think that there are people who go through that now without that kind of coverage, it is heartbreaking to me.
Right.
Whew. But we finally got to stage 4 endometriosis. So I had blown through every warning my body had given stages 1 through 3. We were at stage 4. And when they went in, they had never seen anything like that before. I had endometriosis, which is the uncontrolled growth of uterine cells outside of the uterus. Okay. It had reached my lungs. And it had created a cement-like substance that had solidified the back wall of my vagina, my colon, and my uterus. So all of it was just stuck. So they weren't even able to do the surgery because they did not have the permissions for me to do what needed to be done. That was not just going to be life changing. Like if they didn't get that right, I was going to be left possibly with a colostomy bag. That was going to be the best case scenario, but I could die on the table. So they had to close me back up, wake me up, and tell me what happened. I cried. I I cried. And then they told me we're going to have to put you on a series of medications that we actually give cancer patients to try to burn off as much of the endometriosis as possible. So when we go in, we don't have to cut and remove so much. And I've never prayed so much in my life. I was raised in the church, but that experience took me beyond religion to spirituality.
Beautiful.
And I remember promising the divine that if we came through this, because it's we now, not just me, that I would do a total 360. Like I would not be the same person. And so 6 months later, they did the surgery and it was brutal. It was horrible. They said, oh, you should be all right in 6 weeks. It took me 6 months to get back to some semblance of myself. And it took about 3 years before I was normal. And I put that in quotes because I'm talking about getting back to the place of where I could exercise on a regular basis, where my incontinence was not a problem. Um, and I was starting to look and walk like me. But through all dark spaces, there is light. I have learned that when we look at the universe, Justin, and we see so much dark, it is not void. It is empty. But I'm putting that in quotation marks because even in a vacuum, there is density. There is strength, there is power there. And if you harness it, you can come back to be something absolutely unstoppable. And that's what happened with me because I learned to share my story with people, regardless as to what embarrassment I might have felt at that time. And more people were able to open up and say, that was me. That happened to me. And this is the kind of experience that it crossed every divide: race, religion, gender, creed, ethnicity, geography. Because we were all raised by the same village, believe it or not, by people who loved us and told us if you work hard, you will be successful and you will live happily ever after. These were our parents, our teachers. We were surrounded by a set of friends and colleagues, and we were all racing for that same finish line.
Yeah.
And the truth is, it never comes. You're on a hamster wheel because every time you hit one success, you get there and you're just like, this is it? Where's the feeling? Where's the relief? Where is the I made it? Because then there's something else to achieve.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that we shouldn't be ambitious and that we shouldn't be proud of the things that we accomplish. Please don't take that from what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is it can't define who you are to the place where you put your health, your wellness, your relationships, your budgetary constrictions totally to the side because you believe that this is your self-esteem. This is your self-worth. This is how you value yourself. So if you've not won an award that year, if you've not gotten some proclamation telling you that you're amazing, if you have not made a certain amount of money or live in a certain zip code, that you're nothing, and you might as well just roll over. That is a serious problem that we have in our society.
Yeah, that's worldwide as well. Like that's not
Yes.
like you were saying, it's beyond tradition, geography, culture, race, color, language. I mean, it's a human behavior that
Yes.
gets implemented into our psyche as an idea of success. And it's
Yes.
something that we all must achieve and give everything for almost our lives in a lot of cases to achieve this destination. And not only are you an example, but we have many, many other examples of what that looks like, of this fairy tale that
Yeah.
isn't true. When you actually do give everything to get there, you see like the journey is not external from you, it's within.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's wild. And I mean, like accountability, I love that you're accountable for being the individual that pushed yourself through all of that, because I feel like a lot of people can turn that narrative externally from them because it's easier to do and say, well, I'll blame the system for telling me that. And,
Mm.
I'm the victim of being a product of the system, or whatever it may be. But in reality, it's the accountability that allows us to, see that, okay, this is a choice I can make in my life to continue this way and it can take my life, or I can recreate a belief system surrounding what is important in my life and what actually matters to me.
I'm really glad that you said that about the personal accountability and not blaming the people around you, because there are two things that come from that. Number one, we have to get to a place where we realize that the people who told us that, they did the best they could with what they knew, and they imparted that to us. And then at a certain place, we had a responsibility to ourselves to say, if this isn't working, we have the power and the authority to make a different decision, which then relates to the second thing is we have to release, forgive, and let go.
Yeah.
So any harsh thoughts that we had regarding those people and the circumstances, call it all, count it all joy. These were experiences that brought us to this place right here, right now, to be the light that we need in the world as it is today.
Yeah.
And the more we share our experiences and our stories, the more people will do the same because they'll realize that they are not outliers. They are not the minority report. This is happening everywhere. And we need to come together as community to be a support system, to be a love engine for one another. We have to do that.
I agree. Absolutely. That's what this podcast is really centralized around, is the ability to bring that into reality. But by having individuals such as yourself be an example of what that looks like, and not like, some idea of like some unattainable life. You and I are just two normal people, and it's really that association to many, many lives that these conversations need to be happening within is a really normalcy surrounding something that's completely abnormal. And it's wild, like, to me, how many people do create an identity out of the same search for who they are within what they do. And that what they do for many, many people is a manipulation of employment. We're
Mm.
working and doing something for someone else, when in reality, we all have to do something. It's just the way this world is designed these days. But you can go to work and work on yourself. I mean, I have a job, I have a company, I got to do these things as well. But I go to work and I learn about myself every day. I learn about patience. I learn about accountability. I learn about communication. I mean, I'm getting paid, but I'm doing that inner work on, someone else's money.
Yes. And I love that the focus is to work on you and not on somebody else.
Yeah, yeah. It's incredible. Your story is incredible, but I feel it's very normal. How far people will go to before they let go. I think that, when you talk about letting go, like it sounds so easy to let go, but humans just get ingrained in this idea of, this discomfort that they're living in, which is
Yeah.
completely normal, is completely uncomfortable, but it's become comfortable because going outside of that would be new territory. So for you, navigating this new language, because ultimately, like, learning to love yourself outside of the medical system is two different things. I mean, the medical system is filling you full of medication that often isn't correct for your biology, or for the vibrational frequency that you're carrying. So love is the medicine that we all possess. We all have what we need. It's just learning how to use it. So throughout your journey, in the beginning, what did that look like for you, for learning how to use that medicine of love?
Uh, well, you actually said a mouthful, and so I'm going to go back and then come forward. You were talking about these medications that are prescribed to us that are nowhere near anything that our bodies really need. Um, Part of the reason that we take these medications is because we're not willing to make the changes that are necessary in our lives. And so for me, what was necessary was to tag in and ask for help. And it is hard when you have been able to figure out and master just about everything that has come your way to then say, this is the one thing I just cannot do on my own. And to then look back and to say, I understand why I couldn't, because then that's not the example people need, because they won't be encouraged to get help either. And so I started working with Rowena Silvera Beck, who is a performance coach. And she had me write down everything that I was involved in. And Justin, that it was 7 pages single spaced.
Dang.
Of my roles and my responsibilities. Because, you're not just a mom. When you have a small child, you are also carpool. You're also the meal preparer. You're also the doctor when they get sick, all these roles. And so she had me do that in my home life as well as my professional lives. And remember, at that point, I was running several companies. And so there I was in all of those companies, as well as being married and having child and being part of the sandwich generation, because I had two elderly parents. And during all of this, both of my parents got ill. My mother with a brain bleed and had to have brain surgery, and my father with prostate cancer. They have both come through, thankfully. Um, and I have a wonderful support system of family and friends, but that was incredibly stressful as well. So the first thing is realizing that you need support, you need help, you have to tag people in, and then you actually have to listen. Because one of the things that Rowena said is we got to get this down to like 2 pages. And just full transparency, at the time I was like, oh, I just can't, because, applausaholic. These organizations can't do without me. Yeah, they can. They existed before you, they'll exist after you. And they did. Now, it took me 2 years to wind down from everything because I didn't want to just throw up my hands and just quit. For a couple of organizations, they just did not want to let go. And I actually did have to just do a hard stop. But for the most part, I wound down pretty slowly. And that is something I am grateful for professionally. But as far as the physical and going back to those medications, I believe that if I had made the changes quickly, then I would have been able to come off all those medications quickly,
Yeah.
and I would have felt more like myself a lot sooner than 3 years.
Yeah.
And that's just one of those things. We go to a doctor, the doctor tells us what's wrong, and instead of making the changes we know need to be made, we just say, can I just have a pill so I can continue to do what I want to do, even though my body, my mind, my spirit have all said, we don't want that. But my ego has said, I am not willing to make changes.
Yeah.
And so I am going to stay here. And I need to be clear. Your ego is not a bad guy, not a bad girl. Your ego is a protector, and it is in control as long as your spirit is not allowed to get into the pilot seat. So as long as ego is driving, ego is an unsupervised child running around naked in your house, drawing on your walls. Ego needs structure. Ego needs parents. I'm sorry. You gotta do it. The running around naked in the house doesn't sound too bad, but the drawing on the walls, that's a no. Okay?
Yeah.
That's a no. Oh my goodness.
For me, I have often used ego. I love how you said that, by the way. I mean, you're bang on. I mean, ego is the thing that tells most people that when the doctor says this is what you need, this is what you need to take, that is the avenue. Like this individual that's wearing this white coat in front of me and has a little piece of white paper on the wall, he has all the answers. Yet the first questions when I walked into his office were not, how much water do you drink? What's your diet like? How much sugar do you consume? What's your exercise routine like? How much do you work? Have you processed any emotional traumas? And what are those emotional traumas? So, if those questions are not the first thing coming out of a health practitioner's mouth, you need to reevaluate what your health practitioner is there to do, because more often than not, they are glorified drug dealers. And they're not very good ones because they very often prescribe the wrong medication. So that in itself, like you were saying before, it's so important to go back and really recreate these belief systems through our own understandings, because we all believe this because our parents took us to the doctor because they believed it. They believed in it. But
Yeah.
no one taught them self-love. No one taught them how to communicate about emotions. So of course they needed pills to fix that inconsistency with how they were feeling. So those low vibrational frequencies due to sadness, lonely, division, not being seen, not being heard, not being loved, needed to be rectified somehow because nobody gave them the tools and education to do it. And I think it's important to have that conversation like that so people can see, like, there's a place for medicine in this world. Absolutely there is. But like, love is the medicine that can actualize most of what you're dealing with, and with just some basic changes in life. So I love that you said that.
I totally agree. And one of the parts about love, self-love, is a real commitment to silence and being alone. Not lonely, but taking time to be one with self, commune with spirit, with God of your understanding. Because once I started doing that and I was able to listen to my body, there were a lot of things that spirit revealed to me that I needed to change about the way that I communicated my wants, my needs, my desires, the way that I structured my day, even the things that I ate. And once I made those changes, and they started small and then they started to pick up, the people that would help support me in that came to me, either
Mm.
through a social media feed or a chance encounter with someone, even like how we met.
Yeah.
I met Carrie, right?
Yeah.
I was up early one morning because I was supposed to have a podcast interview and it fell through. And so I did my prayers and my meditations during that time, because it had fallen through. And then I got a notification that a networking group that's no longer functioning was meeting. I pop on, had never been able to get on prior to. Carrie and I were in the same breakout room and we hit it off.
Mm.
And I was never able to get back to that networking group, but it was meant for us to connect. And then she introduced me to you, and now I'm here.
Yeah.
These are the kinds of things that happen, the blessings that happen when we can take time to go within.
Yeah. The stillness, like you say, it is imperative along this journey because, well, it's a requirement simply because
Yes.
it allows you those moments of awareness of self and surrounding, to be open to the synchronicities, because these things happen to people every single day.
Yes.
Synchronicities, to line them up with connections and with people, into this, into that, into everything that they're looking for in life. But if you're closed off and your community that you're surrounded with is not feeling the same way you're feeling, open to receive, then it becomes closed off simply for you as well, just because of your environment, of your community, of your language towards yourself, of your inability to be still. So I love how you said that.
Thank you.
It's very, very nice. It's really important too for people to understand, like, I like creators of our own reality. All of
Yes.
us are gods and goddesses. And really, in order to tap into that understanding of what that means, the simple changes of drinking, purified water, like drink clean water. City water is not good for you. It's filled with minerals, and
That's
it's
true.
acceptable to put fluoride in the water. Why? Because it's good for your teeth. No, because it calcifies your third eye. Like that is a reality. So purified water is an essential piece of ascension or change or evolution or a different feeling, removing toxins from your body. And the same thing happens with food. You don't have to all of a sudden, a lot of people say to become a vegetarian overnight, but, question how much soda you drink. Question how much potato chips you eat. Like, take a look at your choices. It's not the system that's filling you full of these things because you have to buy it and you have to eat it.
That's right. That's exactly right.
It's and it's simple. It's so simple, but I realize I used to say that humans can be so complicated. And it's not that humans are complicated, it's that the truth can be very complicated and the truth can be very difficult to live within.
Mm.
And again, you don't have to lift the veil all within one action, but the more you care for yourself, the more you really see and feel what some of the things that Lenita and I are talking about, because these awarenesses come to us through our choices. And
That's right.
that choice to be awake or that choice to be thinking for yourself and not led by an idea set out by an establishment or an organization or your parents. I think that
Yeah.
that's a big thing. You don't have to
Yes.
be living the same life as your parents. Your parents actually the most beautiful example of everything you may or may not want to be. So their difficulties, their poor choices, their relationship acceptance, like that all is not to be a detriment towards you or a negative or a victimized experience. It's more so an asset to be like, damn, like mom and dad don't love each other. They don't talk. They don't hold hands. They don't do anything together. They don't have anything in common. There's very little, moments of love. Like, okay, maybe I should use that as an example as to what option I may choose in life to understand love as something that I can see and know because I grew up in it. It doesn't have to be this traumatic thing that we carry throughout our life. There's so much education in our trauma.
Yes, but you hit on something really key. We have to get to the place where we see that as an asset to our growth and development. And it is difficult when we are holding the people that we love, who have raised us, who were the gods of our world, to a standard. And good, bad, or indifferent, we are looking to them as the benchmark for life. And they were the ones who established what standards we needed to achieve in order to be a proper representation of their parenting, right? Because I know growing up, if we did something when we were small, it was our parents' fault. We got the spanking, we got the talking to, we got the grounding or whatever the punishment was. But people always looked at our parents like, what'd you do or what didn't you do, right? And
Right.
so we took that into ourselves as well. There was that type of parenting in our minds, and we made a decision: either we were going to go full steam ahead with that with our own children, or we were going to do something totally and completely different. But very rarely did we actually sit down and say, I see how they came to be the people they are. And I appreciate the fact that I was able to see it for what it was, with
Yeah.
two human beings doing the best they could with what they have. But I have a decision to make, and I have an opportunity to forge a new path. And it all goes back to what we started with: was we all do it, what is familiar.
Yeah.
And there is comfort in the familiar. Even though it's not simple, it's not sweet, it's not easy, but there is comfort there. And we will stay in that spot as long as we can. And unless or until life does something, the universe does something beautiful And a lot of times it does look and feel horrible at the time to push us out of that so that we can make a different choice, so we can look at things differently. But you do have to have a certain level of emotional and spiritual intelligence to look at those types of situations with love.
Yeah.
And in forgiving someone else, you first have to forgive self. I have learned that as well.
You're absolutely right. If you cannot accept yourself for who you are in this moment with everything you didn't know and all the tools you didn't have, and offer forgiveness for all those mistakes you made without having the education. I mean, of course, the repetitive cycle of emotional trauma, blame and victim mentality continues. And the permission to be able to do so, like you said there, I mean, that is such a big thing to be able to say, like, it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to have not had the information, the knowledge, the community. We are being brought up in a very strange way. Like, I mean, family is the first thing we sort of know or we're disconnected from
Yeah.
at a very early stage because we often have two parents, that'll have a couple of kids inside of four walls, and it's their experiences, their learned behaviors, their level of intelligence, their level of awareness, their level of spiritual connection, or their dictation of spirituality, which in often cases is religion, is all now embedded into these kids that are living inside this home. So the belief systems that are curated for you before you even have a chance to think for yourself and kind of have other perspectives are so abnormal to the development of conscious, aware humans. But it's a reality. So that I share that with people because it's okay. Like, we can't change how things are, but what we can do is change our choices when we are at a
Yes.
certain stage of awareness. And
Yes.
I always look to the indigenous to teach me many beautiful philosophies, many beautiful ways of life. But you look all over the world, like Africa, Mexico, Australia, Brazil, Peru, here in Canada. When you look at many hands to raise a village, how a village works together. Yes, mom and dad are the ones that pass you into this life, but the whole village shares in the development of the child's understanding of a journey, of its understanding of self, allowing it to make choices and sharing perspectives, which to me is the thing that we really got to wake up to the importance of that, and that's the gift we can give our children.
Agreed. I absolutely agree. And you started this podcast at the beginning saying, why is it we're not taught these things? Like
Yeah.
in school. And it's not to bash the educational system. That's not where I'm coming from. But I really do feel that there are some basic life skills that we would benefit from if we had them. Um, something beyond reading, writing,
Yeah.
and arithmetic.
Yeah.
I'm talking about just the basic being kind to yourself.
Yeah.
Because once you learn to be kind to self, it's a lot easier to be kind to other people.
Yep.
There's something like that.
I agree. No, 100%. My mind is completely focused. I have a name for it. It is called Schools of Consciousness. So
Oh, love
it
that.
is definitely something that is coming into fruition. I am a huge activator of the discussion of this, but I don't just talk about things. I actualize them because I feel the same way as you. The reality around us, the world as it moves and the world as it breathes, is however you perceive it. I live in the same world as everyone else, yet I don't, because I do not let that negativity and fear-based ideologies that are embedded in through social media, through environments and communities to impact my vibrational frequency or my self-love that I curate for myself because I'm very aware of what I put in my space and what I take in my space. And
Yes.
that allows me to become a co-creator of the new earth. And, we talk about the education system. I believe, yes, the education system is extremely defective in many, many ways, shapes, and forms to break self-confidence and self-esteem within children by grading them at a very young age and pitting them against what is intelligence and, what is considered to be dumb within the retention of a mass amount of information when your sleep habits aren't great. You consume entirely way too much sugar. You're amalgamating emotional traumas from the time you were a child because the cost of living has two parents not able to parent these days because they're working all the time. So no one's being seen, no one's being heard. Not no one, but very
I know what you
many
mean.
children are not being seen, not being heard, which means they're not getting love. And, we're sending these children to school for 8 hours to think that, that they're going to learn something that's of value. It's like you're making employees. You're not teaching them life skills that are going to have them be sovereign and happy and able to make conscious decisions to know who they are before they choose what they want to do. You don't that system doesn't really benefit that kind of thought process, but that's okay. Because if we can create an alternative, which we absolutely have the ability to do, because the power has always been with the people, and we can have these conversations and we can take back that power in our life by making these simple changes within our life to grow more into our spiritual connection. And spirituality is just love. And it's actually just love in action, because it's one thing to love self, but it's another thing to do that through action. So your spirituality connection will grow through this action-based application of life, through the understanding that you're going to make a whole bunch of mistakes, because that's what's going to make you better. So
That's
that's very important to know,
that's right.
right?
And yeah, and when you said that's okay, that resonated. I felt that right here in my heart space, because even if for whatever reason a person does not have the opportunity to participate in one of these alternative methods of education that I know you're birthing into the world, they will still have an opportunity to make a different choice, just like we did. Because we were raised in those structures, we were educated in those structures, and there was a hard reset, but it happened, and now we're here.
Yeah. And the tool that both you and I use, that is the most powerful tool that we all possess, that even a child that is, not having the ability to come out of the systematic way of life, is using your voice to be able to voice that truth and say, I'm not well. And it's not just me that's not well. A lot of my classmates are not well, and we're
Yes.
learning how to pretend to be okay when we know we're not. So to be able to teach that gift to your child, because you feel the education system and you feel the way of life and the cost of living of life is not, the path that's going to lead us all to this place of peace and within ourselves and happy for our choices in our life, then that is a gift that we can teach our children, and really pass them the torch and say, hey, I made mistakes, man. Like, look at, I thought this house and I thought this boat, and you know what I mean?
Mm.
Like, all these things, all these gifts I got for you were going to be everything for you, but I realized I screwed up, man. Like, I really need to teach you how to use your voice, because if we can be louder together, like, what a wonderful thing.
Agreed. There are so many things I would have done differently as a parent, but, and you were hitting all the spots. I thought the house, the car, the clothes, and the experiences were what would make life grand, life happy. And even after I realized that they wouldn't, I still was determined to make it so, because that's what I knew. That was that was comfort comfortable, because it was what everybody was doing in
Right.
my circle. And
Yeah.
even now, there are people who think that I'm crazy, or sometimes worse, hypocritical, because they're like, well, you've accomplished all that you've wanted to do. You have all of the alphabet soup. So it's okay for you to now say, oh, throw it all to the wind. And I'm just like, no, no, that's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is there was a different way, a better way that all of this could have been accomplished. It could have been accomplished with love of self, love of my well-being, and it would have been a better example to set for the little people in my life. So not just my daughter, but the people I've mentored and the other colleagues and professionals who have come behind me. And that would have, I believe, created a serious love storm that would have been able to go out into the world sooner if I had just embraced that awakening sooner. Does that make sense?
It does, but everything in its divine time. Every single moment, every single thing that took place within your life has brought you to this place right here to be able to share this story. And I know you know that, but you are creating a love storm. Like, I mean, you wouldn't have been as impactful as you were if all of it didn't play out the way it did.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you as a mother right now, yes, you didn't give them what they want, what they needed at 6, but what you're doing today, like the example that you set, I mean, geez, like I could only be so proud to be showing off my mom. Like you're real. There's no mask. There's no more identity. You are Lynita. And not only that, you're not you're beyond Lynita. You are the love, the light, the truth. You are the light body. You've embodied it. So people search for that their whole life. And here you are, you found it and you're able to share it with me and anyone who listens to this podcast. I think like you have hit a milestone of success that can only be done through inner work, through an immense amount of mistakes, an immense amount of difficulty, and the people that are around you and that get to know you are better for that. So I appreciate you so much
Thank
for your truth and for your journey and for your strength. I mean, thank you for sharing as raw as you did too. There's so much power in that because the vulnerability that you accessed with that, it needs to be said. I mean, because it's true. It happened, and I think it really allows people to get inside your shoes and get inside your heart because there's a lot of kids that are being led to believe in certain cultures that that is the way. So, you're an example of there being another way.
thank you. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you so much for today, Lenita. How do people get in touch with you? You got anything written? Like you got books? What do you got for us?
All of the above. The best way to reach me is my website, which is my name, LynitaMitchellBlackwell.com, Lynita. And from there, you can purchase one of my 6, soon to be 7 books. Connect with me on social media, join my email list, mix it up with one of my retreats, and let's just get connected. Let's share the love.
I love it. I'll put all the contact information below, and I want to bring you back on, and then we're going to talk about the books. We're going to talk about the retreat. Let's talk a little bit more about the applications, about what life looks like after all of the difficulty. I think that's really important for people to hear that, and you've just got a beautiful way of sharing your gift. So I would love to have you back on in a couple months, and let's dive into the books, and we can get people more of an avenue to understand. There's more experience within what you do. So I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Justin.
As always, I just want to say thank you so much for joining in on these episodes and listening to people's experiences so that we can ultimately learn from each other. I mean, this is the best method of education, is what we grow through. So it's practical results shared with each other. Real Talk for an Unreal World is on not only YouTube, but Spotify, all podcast platforms for that matter, TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. And I try to be more relevant these days with lives. So I'll do a lot of lives where I discuss certain topics or something I'm feeling, and I encourage people to come on and share what they're feeling as well, or share perspectives. It really opens it up to more of a community, and this is what I'm trying to create, is a community. So I find that when I'm doing the lives, it allows people to come in and bring what they're feeling and their questions to share with me. So even if I'm talking about a topic, you can ask me anything. And I think that's important. I never really had a teacher or anyone along my journey that I could bounce questions off, which is why I'm so grateful when people bring their experiences to this show, because it allows you to learn from other people, and it allows you to see that vulnerability, truth, and authenticity, what that looks like. that we really don't have to fear judgment because there's a community of people out there that will accept us for who we are. We all have a story, right? We're just learning how to share it and what that looks like. And ultimately, when you start learning these things and you start practicing these behaviors, you're really learning how to love yourself because you show up for yourself and you fear no judgment, which is a big part of what I do and why I do it. So I just wanted to throw that out there and really offer that avenue to people to check out the social links and please get involved, bring whatever you have to the table. I'm really here to help you ascend through fear, alchemizing it using love, because love is the medicine that we all possess. We just have to learn how to use it. And to do that, connection is the key. So much love. Appreciate you as always for being here with me and being on this journey. And please check out the other podcast episodes for lots more information, or send me a message on social media and let me know an episode that you'd like me to do or talk about. So we can keep it kind of inclusive, Let's make this more intimate and interactive. Much love.